Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan, where we have good conversation with good people and any good conversation we're having drunk, but we're a little early in the morning to have a beer, but he's getting a beer. So there we go. I'll finish my coffee and then I'll switch to a beer, but he also just grabbed one for himself. So
I'm good. No, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for asking me.
I care more about our guests.
Okay. Well, I would love one.
Well, you can have one after you're done your coffee.
Okay. We are live from the Women in HVACR conference down in lovely Jacksonville, Florida, and we have on Michelle Myers from Pink Collars. But we're not going to talk much about Pink Collars today. We're actually going to talk about EOS. And so Pink Collars, in case you're wondering, specializes in outsourcing CSRs or insourcing CSRs, dispatchers, and I actually realized I have a spelling error in the description of this, but we'll get that cleaned up later. So it's dispatches, not dispatchers, and or office managers into your home service business. But you also went down the journey, and we were talking before this about implementing EOS inside of your business 20 months ago. And, you said the first 2 years was something that was crazy to be able to overgo. You've overturned your leadership team as a result of EOS, and really want to unpack that and talk about one of your upcoming messages at the HR, which is titled Control Freak, How EOS Changed Her Business and Her. Well, it's your business and you.
That's true.
I had to put it into, the other term for that. So I'm excited to dive in with you today. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for asking me up.
Hey, you're very welcome. So, well, if I remember correctly, he's like, well, how can I get on your podcast?
Yeah,
so technically you invited yourself on.
I might have. I might have asked how much money you wanted. I don't know. Maybe.
How do I get on? Is you got to rub some shoulders, grease some wheels. You got to pay. Yeah. Nah, just bring whiskey.
Perfect.
We're very easy.
Yes.
I see this.
Yes. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey into, the trades and how Pink Collars was formed?
Pink Collars was formed in 2016. It was an offshoot of my first business, which was called My Virtual Page, that was started in 2010, 2011, when the economy was not so fun. When the economy crashed, I found myself and my team of architecture, design, and developer team members all laid off at the same time. So I answered an ad on Craigslist before Craigslist became weird, because now Craigslist is weird, to answer the phones for a tree service.
Now Craigslist is just your personals.
Well, but it's not. It didn't used to be weird like that. And I answered the phone for a tree service company in Colorado. So I gratefully went along a journey of business ownership by hook or by crook, I say, because it wasn't my first choice. I was looking for a world back in the design world and architecture world. And so starting a business was kind of like a backup plan until something better came along. And it's interesting that the journey turned into the something better that came along for me in my life. And so now we employ primarily women. We have some guys in our lineup. And we all work remotely in every time zone in the United States, and we solve a very painful problem in the office. So I assign a person to your company, and they work within your tools remotely, just as if they were an employee in your business. And it's not an answering service. It's not a room full of strangers. It's not offshore. And we're proudly U.S. owned and operated. And I'm grateful to be here with you guys today. And that's Pink Collars.
Awesome. Well, but the fascinating part is that it was a plan B to start a business.
100%.
Right. And you're like, whatever, I'll just do it because you need to fill the void. And now here you are. So I'm sure there were probably a lot of trials and tribulations of, hey, you didn't plan to start to run a business. You had no running a business experience.
100%.
And now here you are. So what were some of the biggest pain points, struggles, obstacles when you first started?
Well, I think the biggest one was, as a designer and a visionary by trade, I kept hiring myself. I kept hiring people like me.
Right.
They were fun and like creative and outgoing and kind of hustlers and making things happen. And that does not a good CSR make. A good CSR is a person who likes a checklist and someone who likes to stay within a boundary and someone who likes to create processes and finish things and, solve problems every day. And even though design and, being a visionary is a problem solving skill, it does not do well under the rigor of customer care. And so I kept hiring myself and crashing the plane consistently.
Well, it's a pitfall that a lot of
Right.
owners fall into, right?
Mhm.
Because they want to
Yep.
work with people that they like.
100%.
And who do you like more than you?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it was a disaster. So in 2012, 13, I met and married my husband, and he came into the business and said, this could really be something. At that time, it was myself, and I had 3 clients. I had a clamshell phone, 2 laptops, a desktop, a phone that plugged into the wall, old school. They
What are
used to have
those?
those things. I know, it's crazy.
Was it one of the ones where you had to put you had to turn it?
There
and
was
when you
no rotary.
And when you fucked up on the last button,
No.
you're like, ah, shit,
There was
God,
no
I gotta start
rotary.
again.
No rotary, but he was convinced I was either a drug dealer or some sort of other hustler of some sort of a kind, right? And I said, no, I'm actually just answering the phones for these home service businesses that need help. And you have to remember back in 2008 and 9 and 10, when the first journey of this whole thing started, cloud computing was not a thing. You used to have to download software. You used to have to actually have it on your computer to get it done. And so working remotely was not really a thing. And so when he saw me in 2013 and said, this could be a business, he said, you should just hire somebody to replace yourself. So what did I do? I hired somebody like me. And her name was Julia, and she had a British accent. I don't know where that came from. Apparently, I was a Brit in another life. But she would answer the phones for a tree service in Colorado with a British accent. Hello, this is Julia, Lumberjack and Jill Tree Service. How may I help? I mean, it was like out of a movie. It was so ridiculous. And I made that same error, not because of Julia, but because of me, and had a lot of twists and turns until my husband looked at me and said, I am now doing all the hiring for this business. And that's when we turned it around.
Interesting.
Well, very interesting because you think about somebody else other than the owner running the hiring.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times the business owners, that's one of the last things that they get rid of is the hiring.
Because they believe that creation of the team is so important. And it really, really is. But often it is not your strongest skill set.
Yeah. Well, most people don't have a recruiting based background. They don't have an interviewing background. They don't know the talent to look for. They don't know what they want. Right. And that's a big struggle for a lot of business owners. Yeah.
Well, my husband ran the customer service desk for a construction company materials supply business. And so he dealt with contractors every day. And so he spoke their language. And he said, I know what they need because I know them, because I am them and I serve them. So I'm going to go out and find your people. And the minute he did that, it changed everything.
Yeah. Well, speaking of great people, they on YouTube, fix the spelling error, boss.
Oops.
Right. My bad. Thank you, team. Thank you, EJ. I'm guaranteeing that was EJ. So thank you for doing that. So now that you've got the business, it's presumably, well, I guess if you started 20 months ago, 2021 is when you looked at adding in EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. We tried self-implementing it once. It didn't go too well on our end. We've hired an EOS implementer. We're starting in end of November for our business, On Purpose Media. But where was the recognition or the realization rather that you're like, okay, EOS is a great system. I need to put it in my business. How is it going to help me?
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of growth in COVID years, as a lot of businesses did. And we were bumping our head on our top line revenue. And I knew that I needed an operations manager. So we got some COVID money, and I decided that I was going to invest that in a person that could put some more structure into the business, because I was still fully in operations. My husband was fully doing sales. And so we invested in an ops manager and said to this person, hey, we really want EOS in the business. This is something we really want. And 1 quarter went by, and 2 quarters went by, and then 3 quarters went by, and it wasn't being implemented. And I was like, we've really got to get this off the ground. And so I went around this person, which I know as the owner, you're not supposed to do, but it was just too long. I was just freaking out, and found an implementer and hired an implementer from our local area, called a meeting for everybody, flew everybody in. Again, all of our team works remotely, so I have people all over the country. Flew everybody in for this 1-hour presentation to understand EOS. And as I'm taking her back to her Airbnb, she decides to give her notice. She's like, yeah, I'm out. And so I'm heartbroken, thinking, I've just invested this time and effort in this incredible person, and she still is. And now I want to do EOS, and now it's already going to turn my people upside down. But I persevered and hired that implementer. And now we're about in month 20, I believe. And EOS has given the very clarity that I think that I know that we needed. And it's holding me accountable more than anything. I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, that was the missing piece. I was just a runner and gunner. I was like, oh, every new idea, let's do it all. Oh yeah, we can serve that industry. Sure, we can do that CRM. And it was whiplashing my team. And so that piece for me, I knew we had to settle that down or we were not going to be able to scale.
Mm.
Hitting plateaus is something that a lot of businesses go through.
Mhm.
And it's fascinating to me that you looked for a solution to try and get around that and figure it out.
Mhm.
How did you get introduced to EOS?
Well, I had seen the book and seen, the audiobook. I tried to read it several times. Again, I have a tiny bit of ADHD, probably.
As
And
most visionaries do.
I could not get through the book. I felt like I was in algebra in 9th grade again. I thought I was going to die. And I just could not figure out the material. And so I listened to the audiobook and then I watched all of the videos that, Gino Wickman has on YouTube, all those little short videos where it's like he compresses the whole book into like a couple of hours. And I just kept consuming the material over and over in different ways so that it could hit in my brain. And I just kept knowing that this was the solution. You have to remember, I build systems and processes for other businesses, and yet I was defying my own logic and not building one for myself, right? I was walking around telling everybody, I'm the systems queen. I can clean up your shit. And my own backyard was a disaster. So I knew I was speaking more. And to be totally honest, I was afraid of getting on stage and being a liar. I was totally indicted by getting on stage and saying, you should do this and you can do that, knowing that my own business was chaotic. And so I had to change that.
The imposter syndrome is
hundo.
real.
A hundo.
So how do you overcome, obviously, the imposter syndrome is one, but the thing I wrote down is defy logic, right?
Mhm.
And so you're going against your own, for what you're doing for other people, and the systems and processes queen.
Yep.
How do you overcome the mental hurdle to say, okay, this is actually something that we really need. I need to get it in my own way, and I need to put it in place in my business. And this, by the way, just isn't related to EOS. It's just like anything really in that matter.
Well, and that's like you go to an HVAC business,
Sure.
right? Their filter's the dirty one,
Sure.
right?
Typically.
Yeah. Their air conditioning service.
Yeah. 100%.
But they're always out serving clients, right? For us as a marketing company,
Sure.
our marketing is last.
Don't do your own stuff.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. We want to make sure that if we're spending dollars and we're spending time, we're doing
Yeah.
it for clients and we're taking care of
100%.
them, and
100%.
our stuff gets neglected.
I mean, honestly, it came down to, I was in a coaching program called Conquer. And my Conquer coach was a woman named Elena, and she's just a complete badass. And she sat with me for less than an hour on our first session. And she said, Michelle, self-care is going to be your biggest struggle. Taking care of yourself, putting your own oxygen mask on first was going to be your biggest struggle. And I just kept going back to that, thinking that I needed to put the oxygen mask on my business. And I wasn't going to be the one that could be all the things. And the other thing that I just kept holding on to when I was watching those Gino Wickman videos is you were free to be yourself in his system. It was okay to be the visionary. It was okay to be the integrator. It was okay to be neither. It was okay to be the owner. It was okay to be who you were. And I kept trying to be all the things. And I think as women, we do this especially. You can be a mother and you can be a business owner and you can be a community member and you can do a nonprofit and you can do all this stuff. And I just kept burning myself into the ground with this business. And I knew if I didn't separate myself a little bit and put some sort of system between me and my people, almost like bubble wrap between my waha and their need for structure, I was going to end up losing the good people that I had.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, you mentioned one thing too, in terms of the people and the turnover that you had in doing EOS. And I think a
100%.
lot of times people get scared of that because now you're adding in accountability
100%.
across all layers of the organization, top to bottom, bottom to top. What's that like when you probably didn't know that you're going to lose
100%.
the leadership team,
Not at
but
all.
having to turn that entire team over as a result of EOS, what was that like?
Well, it's been terrifying. I mean, I won't lie. But I can promise you that every single time we've had a change, we've had rocks that we assign to each person at the beginning of every quarter. And this is EOS language, forgive me, but these are the goals that you set up. And so when we would set goals up and when the same team members weren't making those goals, quarter after quarter, it was really easy to then have a conversation with them that was no longer personal, but it was about that goal.
Mhm.
And so I would very systematically say, okay, this quarter, then you and I are going to spend a focused hour or maybe even 2 hours a week on Zoom, just working on your rock. We're just going to go through the stuff. We're going to get the shovel in and we're going to dig it out together. And so me focusing one-on-one with those people, even though that was a massive effort for me, again, I can hardly sit still in a chair, but I had to do it, helped them exit themselves out of my business. So without fail, not a single person was terminated, not a single person, there was no flameouts, but each individual that was having those struggles realized that this was not the place for them and they self-selected their way out of the business. So that for me gives me a lot of peace because I know we all did our best to make it work. And that's what you want as an owner. You don't want to have hard feelings. You see these people again. I mean, they're around and this industry is big, but it's not that big, right? People still show up. And so the last thing you want is bad energy out there and bad things. But the beauty of EOS is it gives that protective mechanism for the two of you to walk through that struggle and then determine with one another if it's time to separate. And that's really the cool part.
Yes.
Did you find that the staff members stayed on longer than necessary at times when waiting for them to phase themselves out?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And that was also very painful.
Mm-hmm.
But without fail, the person that has either replaced that individual or the system that we've put in place or the structure now that is available to the person in that seat has made that seat or that role so much more successful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, I mean, Tommy Mello says it all the time. Your A players are watching the way you're treating people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said it on stage yesterday. Your A players are watching. And I have literally seen A players just rise to the occasion. Now, when we say, hey, we have a management role, we have like half the staff wants to come into management. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Whereas before it would be like, leadership? Oh yeah, no. Everybody would duck. Oh yeah, no. Now we get lots of applications. People want to be in leadership because they know we get to do stuff. We solve problems. We check boxes. We get things done. And so for me, that's been the real turning point, is that we have become a organization of leaders. And that's the win for me.
Right. Well, an organization of leaders is like a lot of people think that, okay, well, to be a leader, I got to be in leadership. No, you can be a
not
leader.
at all.
You can be a leader in your role, no matter what your role is.
Any seat in the business.
Any seat in the business, you can be a leader within that seat, and that's a key distinguishing factor. That I think a lot of people that need to know that is that, hey, you know what? Even if you're doing that role, still be a leader in it.
100%. And we've chosen people because of their individual contributions, because they're leading in the seat that they're in. And we look at them and go, hey, this thing is kind of coming up. What do you think? And they're like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And so, yeah, we're able to recognize that stuff. And then once we slip them into EOS, we use 90 as our software platform that keeps everything organized. Once we slip them into that software and they can see kind of what we've solved and what we're working on and what we're doing, the onboarding of that mental acumen is just so much faster. I mean, they can just see what's happening. It's like they're jumping into a river midstream, but they're not drowning. They can see where they're supposed to be going. And that for me is just so wonderful to see people win like that every day.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you went through the process of setting up your accountability chart, which for those again that aren't familiar with EOS, it's essentially an org chart, but based on accountability, not based on role. And it's not necessarily top-down leadership, but bottom-up leadership as well. When you were setting that up and you saw yourself in more roles than you necessarily were a good fit for, how did you go about firing yourself?
Oh, I was in 3 seats at the beginning of EOS. So I was the owner, visionary, right? We ended up hiring a fractional integrator. And so that person's in our business 10 hours a week. He's been there. We're just now on a year anniversary of him. I thought my operations person could do the integration role. We've just found that a clearer voice was going to be necessary for us.
Right.
I was in finance and I was in sales at one point. And so I was in 3 seats. And the very first one that was important for me to get out of was sales. I can sell all day long, right? Because I'm the owner. So it makes sense to me. It's like, well, if you didn't work with us, come on. So I didn't want to give up sales. That was kind of fun. I had a lot of joy in sales. I love talking to the contractors. I love talking to the other vendors. It's just my jam. And so I had a hard time giving that one up, but we had a salesperson in the seat, and that person just wasn't meeting the criteria. And I had to get that person out of sales. So I was in sales, in, out. Now we have an incredible person in sales. His name's Robert, and he's killing it because of the accountability. And then I was able to get out of finance by hiring a fractional CFO. So fractional C-suite or upper level people is a real weird brain bender, especially for home service, because most of the time you guys want them in your office, in their world, I found that having, really high level, high dollar people at a shorter amount of time in my business was really beneficial. So again, it's almost like I'm pulling, paint samples off the wall to build this business. That design mind is still there. I'm architecting my leadership team with some fractional people to help get out of the seat faster. And now that we're probably, I think this is month 20 in EOS, I'm assuming, at least the goal for me for this quarter, is to write a general manager's description and then have our fractional integrator move to a full-time internal role.
Nice.
But again, you can step through these things. So you don't have to just wipe the board clean or not have people in those seats. You can find vendors out there that can help you solve that problem.
Yeah, there's lots of fractional vendors.
Yeah.
Lots of fractional
And
ones.
it's more accepted now.
Right.
Every month it's like not as weird, to have a fractional person in your business.
Well, and I love the idea of it because it allows you to bring in those top talent people,
Yeah.
those A players.
Yeah, they can just jam.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're going to do what a B player can do in 40 hours in 10.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what happened. Yeah.
And you're probably paying them close to the same amount.
I am. And so my payroll didn't change. Just the way I paid somebody changed, and what I expect from them changed a small amount. But the results is what I care about, right? I don't care how we get to the result. I just want the result. And so you have to decide how you're going to, reverse engineer that result for me. And I'm leaving it up to you to figure that out.
Pivoting a little bit, you mentioned your husband was in the business. Is he still in the business with you right now?
He is not.
Okay.
No, he is not. He and I had an incredible opportunity last year to own a Wise Coatings or a floor coatings company. We're partnered with Brandon Vaughn, who is a house call pro person, and in kind of the trades business, he's owned several home service businesses. So we run a floor coatings company location in Loudoun County, Virginia.
Okay.
Beautiful, Western Loudoun. And he's in the field every day doing the thing. And it's really funny because he still has all the same tradesperson struggles. He had a guy quit on Tuesday, I think, as soon as I arrived here. He's like, oh, just so-and-so quit. So we have a lot of fun talking about our separate businesses. But we were working in home office together for a number of years, and we decided that he needed to go do his own thing. He was watching way too much of the Golf Channel, if you know what I'm saying. And I love him, but I'm like, you've got another 10 good years in you. And if you start acting like this now, you're going to be on the couch forever. Yeah. So I kicked him out. I bought him a van. I put him to work. It's terrible to say.
So, but my curiosity is, so he did it for about a year. So he was part of the EOS transition.
He was.
Correct.
He was.
So I'm curious because it's been a theme yesterday of some of the individuals that have been on that talked about family businesses and in working together, and that dynamic, especially husband, wife, you're home all the time, you're working in the business together or in the office together, and then you're home and then you're together. How did your guys' relationship change pre and post EOS?
Okay. Pre-EOS, I think we would talk about work constantly. Post-EOS, we now have scheduled time where we talk about the business. In fact, I turned my family room used to be our home office. I changed the family room into a family room. I changed the dining room into the living room. I basically reworked my entire house, and I got this thing called the keeping room, which is a weird British thing. Back to Britain. I don't know where it is. Okay, but at the end,
that's why you hired in the first place.
Clearly, there's something here, right? Okay, so the keeping room is apparently a soft seating section of your kitchen So if you think of an old farmhouse kitchen and then there's the fireplace at the end and they usually have the wingback chairs, I basically created that in my house. And so we have these 4 chairs for our 4 people that live still at home. My son's out of the business, off the payroll. So there's 4 chairs, and the only time we're allowed to talk about business is if we're have cups of coffee and we're sitting in one of those chairs. Other than that, we are not allowed to talk about it. We don't talk about it at the dinner table. We certainly don't talk about it upstairs. He brought business into the bedroom the other night, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Where's your coffee and where are you in the chair? Because it's not happening here, buddy. Downstairs."
Brings the chair upstairs into the room.
So
that wasn't a no.
So I say all that to say that I built a system of structure to deliver business information within our home,
right,
based on understanding how to build a system of structure for information in EOS in my business. And it seems weird, but the chairs are sort of like the structure. Like we go to the chairs. That's the only time we talk about it is when we're in those chairs, and that's it. And we always do it in the morning when we're fresh. There's nothing more diabolical than talking about business at the end of the day when somebody's just quit and you're frustrated and your heart hurts and your kids are angry and people are hungry and shit's gone wrong all day. You can't do it then. So you have to have the personal discipline to not do that. And then we also, in addition to that, made a calendar event every time from 6:30 to 8 is personal talk time. And so after dinner, because we're weird and we eat early, if it's 6:30 to 8, the only thing we're allowed to talk about is personal stuff. And it's on my calendar. I can show it to you on my phone. Like it's on my calendar. And that's it. And so we've really structured our lives and our communication styles to distill it down to very strategic times and places to protect each other from the garbage that a business owner carries around. I mean, I feel like Linus sometimes dragging the dirty blanket through my life, and I don't want to drag that into my marriage and into my parenting. So we're really working hard to change that. My kids were the impetus behind getting EOS in the business too. I had our home office for many, many years, almost 10 years. And I rented an office in town and I started purposely leaving my laptop in the building and coming home without any devices. And I would sit there for the first 3 months. I'd be like, okay, so we make dinner and now what do? We don't just get on our laptop and start working some more? What is this? It was a whole new world. And I think that for me was big. I had a 12 and a 15-year-old and they're turning 13 and 16 this year. And there is nothing more gangster than a teenage girl to make you get your shit straight. So I'm scared. I mean, I'm just trying to keep it 100 before they leave the house. I don't want to get stabbed. So I can't work a lot. I have to have some boundaries, and EOS has helped me do that too.
Well, and and again, common theme that we've had from people that have that is and I love the chair idea, and I love the keeping room, and I love separating that, and I love building in the personal time, because a lot of people don't protect that time.
Yeah.
They don't guard their family time,
You have to.
and it just erodes away, especially when you're working together in the business, or if you're running two separate businesses. Also is the other part, because now you're all business all the time.
Yeah.
And you know what? Your kids don't deserve all business all the time. Your kids deserve you. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad that you guys have that in there, because a lot of business owners miss that mark.
I dated someone in high school, young man. We were 15 when we met. We met each other again many, many, many years later. And I was single at the time. We dated again. I thought maybe it could, there's going to be this, cute little Hallmark story. It ended up turning into nothing. But my nickname from him was All Business Betty. And so he'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, All Business Betty. And so I've had that in my life, my whole life since I've been a teenager. And again, EOS doesn't indict you for being that person. It gives you a place to dump All Business Betty and just, and then pull back and be able to be Michelle and the mom and the wife and the keeping room and the fireplace and all the fun stuff. Yep. And so for me, it was really important to be able to put that somewhere, so I didn't drag it through the rest of my life.
Well, and it probably created a sense of enjoyment too.
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. It does.
I'm really curious, as someone who is the visionary of the company and has that entrepreneurial spirit, it can be really difficult to let go of those things and difficult to put habits in place to really protect yourself.
Yeah.
And this is, I was listening to the 4-Hour Body this morning from Tim Ferriss. And one of the things that he talked about in there was that, I think he called it a Kimomoto moment, where the I should do it becomes a must.
Yeah.
What was that moment for you?
I think my kids was really the moment for me. My daughters, when I travel, I food prep for them. I have all these weird glass containers. If you follow me on Facebook, you can see my food prep game is strong. Like I'm really weird. Like it goes into like next level stuff. Like I want to make sure that I'm connected with them the whole time. And so traveling is still, can be hard, but I was leaving them mentally and emotionally in the house. And, I grew up with parents that were in the ministry. My dad was pastor. My mom sang in church every Sunday. We were the kids in the front row. We had to be perfect, sit straight, white tights. I can still see it all. And I always felt like the ministry kind of was primary in my parents' life. And I had realized that my business was becoming primary in my life. And I was repeating, the sins of the past. And it was a real watershed moment when my daughters were like, Mom, can you just get off that computer? Because you have to remember, I had a podcast too. So I had 4 screens, a DSLR camera, just like this, 2 laptops. I mean, I had all the stuff and we walked past it every day. Like it was another member of the family, all this gear. And I thought, what am I doing? Like, am I hiding from them in this gear wall of stuff? Am I running from something? And so I think just getting all of that physical stuff out of my space was really huge. And they have literally said it time and time and time again. Mom, having an office is like so cool. And you have to remember, I was on the cutting edge of working at home. I was like, I'm not going to go get an office. Getting an office is lame. And I was the first person to say, hey, this office thing, this is like the shit. Like, this is great. I can go home and like be normal. And so I think having kids turn a certain age, I think was really the big moment for me, because they held me accountable. And like I said, they're tough.
Well, and like you also not everybody can do that instant switch from a home office and just be out and be done.
No, you can't just step across the threshold and start chopping onions and be a different human. Right. No, you're thinking about payroll. Yep. You're still twitching from the day.
Yeah. There's no decompress time or drive time home, right? And so and not everybody can balance and do that adequately enough. And some people can.
Some people
can, and they can be like, oh, done, boom, I'm out, and now I'm chopping onions, right?
Yeah.
And you're crying.
Doors closed.
You're crying because the onions are making you tear up. That's the worst part about onions.
Yes.
That's what happens at the end of payroll, right?
It is.
You're like, I'm ready to cry anyways. I'm going to go cut onions.
Right?
How can I hide
Forced crying.
So
but that's a good self-realization. And I think a lot of people that are working from home, or HVAC businesses predominantly, you have a shop, you have an office, you're going to it, right?
But even then, you're coming home at the end of the day after being in the truck all day, and what do you need to do? The payroll, the invoices.
Yeah, so you drag it home. You drag it in the door no matter what.
It still comes with you.
And it's trying to separate that, I think, is a key thing. So I work from home, and we all work from home in our business. And I close my office door and I just don't go back into it. I'll go grab something. And for me, I can make the mental switch.
Sure.
Most of the time. But sometimes you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we're up at the 33-minute mark. I figured we'd kind of go long here. But of course, we want to make sure that if people had questions, they want to reach out to you guys to check you out. You can reach them at pinkcollars.com. That is the insourcing CSRs, dispatchers, and or office managers for your home service business.
And the one thing I will say about it that I really love is that you get your dedicated person.
Yes.
100%. It's one person every day. So they get to know your team, your culture. I get them on Slack. We build an entire dashboard in Trello of everything your business does, so they have it at hand. You're collaborating with them on those services. If somebody's in, out, if a service changes, prices are changing, anything's going on in your company, we're documenting it all the time as a living sort of library of what your business is. And that way, if we don't have someone that's performing, we can switch them out. And again, like in EOS, the river's going by and that's your business. And it's our job to jump in and swim at any point. And so we want to build a structure around your company so that I can add people, remove people, or replace people at any given time. And the pain is not realized at your business level. We shoulder all that pain for you.
That's the fractional part
of
things, right? In a sense, except for you're getting a dedicated full-time person, right?
It is. So, you're getting one human being.
Yeah, which is great. And if you want to reach out, sales@pinkcollars.com is their email address. We'll put those in the show notes for after. Of course, we do have one last question, and it is our famous question.
Oh, I didn't know there's a famous question.
Oh yeah, it's
I
our
love
famous
this.
question.
Okay, give it to me. I'm ready.
All right. What is one question that you wish people would ask you more but don't?
Ooh. What's one question that people would ask me more but they don't? Why did you decide to take on the Christmas in Middleburg parade? Which is a nonprofit that I run, and it's a parade where we have 15,000 people come to our 600-person town, and it's complete pandemonium. I stand at the top of the road and I orchestrate 1,000 people walking down the middle of the street. Horns, dogs, horses. I had a llama last year. I'm going to up it this year with a donkey, so watch out. And doing that is complete insanity. And so I wish people would ask me, why do you do this? Because everyone just comes up to me and goes, it's such a great event. Oh, it's our Christmas card picture. Oh, we love it so much. And meanwhile, I just try to stay sober until the end of the day. So there's that.
So why do
you put yourself through that?
Because I have to get some of this visionary stuff out of me in some way, and I'm not allowed to persecute my employees anymore. So I have to do it to my community. I had to get it somewhere. So that's it.
So deep down, all visionaries are actually addicts, and we need an
100%.
outlet.
I have to find somewhere where I can be a maniac. Seriously.
I read somewhere that generally like high performing CEOs and leaders and visionaries inside of business are psychopaths, but in a psychopath in a different sense. Okay,
not a stabbing you in the night way.
Not a stabbing, but
Okay.
you think about psychopaths. What
Got
do
it.
they have?
A fine line.
There is a fine line.
Okay,
Because what you think about, a psychopath gets really deep down ingrained, focused on one particular thing, and they can't get it out of their mind.
Oh, I do.
Right,
I
it
do
becomes an
obsess. I do
obsession.
obsess about
it
certain
becomes an
things.
obsession, right?
100%.
And so now, but obviously they take their obsessions out in an unhealthy way, whereas business owners tend to obsess over their business.
Okay,
And
I get
hopefully
you.
you're doing it in a healthy way. And I think EOS, to bridge it all together,
Yeah.
can actually take your obsession for your business and put it into a healthy light.
It 100% does. It's
Yep.
bubble wrap for me and my team.
Yep.
It really is.
Yep.
Love it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been
Thank
great.
you. I'm
Thank
so
you
grateful.
for dropping some wisdom.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And your glasses match our brand.
Hey, and apparently I'm in the Cool Kids Club because I wore the pink
There
to
you
your
go.
podcast.
There
So
you
thank
go.
you.
Awesome.
And until next time.
Cheers. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.